The Dore Lectures on Mental Science. By Thomas Troward. Lecture 3. The New Thought and the New Order. Part 1 of 2. In the two preceding lectures I have endeavored to reach some conception of what the all-originating spirit is in itself, and of the relation of the individual to it. So far as we can form any conception of these things at all, we see that they are universal principles applicable to all nature, and, at the human level, applicable to all men. They are general laws, the recognition of which is an essential preliminary to any further advance, because progress is made, not by setting aside the inherent law of things, which is impossible, but by specializing it through presenting conditions which will enable the same principle to act in a less limited manner. Having therefore got a general idea of these two ultimates, the universal and the individual, and of their relation to one another, let us now consider the process of specialization. In what does the specialization of a natural law consist? It consists in making that law or principle produce an effect which it could not produce under the simply generic conditions spontaneously provided by nature. This selection of suitable conditions is the work of intelligence. It is a process of consciously arranging things in a new order, so as to produce a new result. The principle is never new, for principles are eternal and universal, but the knowledge that the same principle will produce new results when working under new conditions is the key to the unfoldment of infinite possibilities. What we have therefore to consider is the working of intelligence in providing specific conditions for the operation of universal principles, so as to bring about new results which will transcend our past experiences. The process does not consist in the introduction of new elements, but in making new combinations of elements which are always present, just as our ancestors had no conception of carriages that could go without horses, and yet by a suitable combination of elements which were always in existence, such vehicles are common objects in our streets today. How, then, is the power of intelligence to be brought to bear upon the generic law of the relation between the individual and the universal so as to specialize it into the production of greater results than those which we have hitherto obtained? All the practical attainments of science, which place the civilized world of today in advance of the times of King Alfred or Charlemagne, have been gained by a uniform method, and that a very simple one. It is by always inquiring what is the affirmative factor in any existing combination, and asking ourselves why, in that particular combination, it does not act beyond certain limits. What makes the thing a success, so far as it goes, and what prevents it going further? Then, by carefully considering the nature of the affirmative factor, we see what sort of conditions to provide to enable it to express itself more fully. This is the scientific method. It has proved itself true in respect of material things, and there is no reason why it should not be equally reliable in respect of spiritual things also. Taking this as our method, we ask, what is the affirmative factor in the whole creation, and in ourselves as included in the creation, and, as we found in the first lecture, this factor is spirit, that invisible power which concentrates the primordial ether into forms, and endows those forms with various modes of motion, from the simply mechanical motion of the planet up to the volitional motion in man. And, since this is so, the primary affirmative factor can only be the feeling and the thought of the universal spirit. Now, by the hypothesis of the case, the universal spirit must be the pure essence of life, and therefore its feeling and thought can only be towards the continually increasing expression of the livingness which it is, and accordingly the specialization, of which we are in search, must be along the line of affording it a center from which it may more perfectly realize this feeling and express this thought. In other words, the way to specialize the generic principle of spirit is by providing new mental conditions in consonance with its own original nature. See my Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science. The scientific method of enquiry therefore brings us to the conclusion that the required conditions for translating the racial or generic operation of the spirit into a specialized individual operation is a new way of thinking, mode of thought concurring with, and not in opposition to, the essential forward movement of the creative spirit itself. This implies an entire reversal of our old conceptions. Hitherto we have taken forms and conditions as the starting point of our thought and inferred that they are the causes of mental states. Now we have learnt that the true order of the creative process is exactly the reverse, and that thought and feeling are the causes, and forms and conditions the effects. When we have learnt this lesson, we have grasped the foundation principle on which individual specialization of the generic law of the creative process becomes a practical possibility. New thought, then, is not the name of a particular sect, but is the essential factor by which our own future development is to be carried on, and its essence consists in seeing the relation of things in a new order. Hitherto we have inverted the true order of cause and effect. Now, by carefully considering the real nature of the principle of causation in itself, causa causans as distinguished from cause causata, we return to the true order and adopt a new method of thinking in accordance with it. Lecture 3. The New Thought and the New Order. End of Part 1 of 2. Need help understanding Trauard's teachings? The Thomas Trauard lectures contain very deep and powerful information, but to get the most out of them, require repeated listening and in-depth study. Trauard had only one personal student, Genevieve Behrend, and her book Your Invisible Power distills the essence of Trauard's lectures in a concise and easy-to-understand format. For many, this is a much preferred way to learn Trauard's teachings. Click the link below this video to visit yourinvisiblepower.us and learn more about Genevieve Behrend's recently updated book.